Welcome to the Journey Through Homeschooling podcast, practical support for every step of your homeschool adventure. I'm Jami Thornsberry.
And I'm Adonna Pryor.
And Adonna, today we are going to talk about finishing out your homeschool year. You know, finishing out your homeschool year isn't just about finishing a last lesson. It really is about celebrating growth, creating closure, and setting up momentum for your next year. So as we think about those things, Adonna, what are your first thoughts about ending out your homeschool year well?
This time of year was always, it's that time of year where you're just tired. You want to be done. Spring break really is a necessary tool. It was, at least it was for me.
Yeah.
But you have mixed feelings going into the 1st of March. The weather is starting to look lovely. You want to get back in the garden. You want to be outside. You're thinking of things you want to plan during the summer. You're also getting excited for what we're doing next year. So this year tends to get really frustrating. At least it did for me.
Yeah.
It tended to get to the point where I just wanted to be over right after spring break. I wanted it to be all done. And then we could take, like an early summer break and start up in the summer. So it really was difficult for me those last 9 to 10 weeks to push through what we needed to get done. And there were several years where I think the focus was pulled back to let's just do language arts and math. Let's just do our reading and then call it good for the rest of the year. Let's call science and history and, art and all those things good for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a struggle. But this is a really great time to take a deep breath and look at what you're doing and remember that finishing well is for me, has become a character trait. One of the things I noticed about myself is I did not finish things well. Mm-hmm. I started really well. I was very enthusiastic about what I was doing. I planned really well. And then I left things undone or incomplete. So for me, this was a character development for myself. I needed to practice finishing well, and I wanted my kids to see me practice finishing well. So it was a character issue of self-control and finishing well, even if it was just in small areas. So it was kind of like going back to the things that I had learned before. Start small, keep it simple. Don't go out and buy the $100 planner. Just calm down, keep it simple, and do what you can. So when I got to that place where it was really, really difficult for me to finish, I would focus on, let's read, let's write, let's do some math, and let's take a breath, and it's going to be okay.
So in finishing well, did that mean that you had to finish every last page of the curriculum before you stopped?
When we started, yes, because I had bought into that public school mentality. Now, not what the public schools are doing, but that public school mentality. In other words, what I thought had to be done. And then the Lord started bringing those memories up of watching movies when we were in school, of doing crossword puzzles, of playing games, of doing a lot of art, even in all of my other classes. So the last, I would say, 6 weeks of school, as I remember them, were really kind of a tie everything up.
As you were a child,
yes.
When you were attending school.
When I was a kid, there was really just a where the teachers were trying to tie everything up and trying to tie everything together, and they were trying to get things completed. But we never, in my memory, I don't remember ever finishing a textbook in school, whether it was in high school. I don't remember finishing a literature textbook or a math textbook or the Spanish textbook or the physics textbook. I don't remember us getting to every single chapter. Now, I know we made it through the majority of the book, but I really don't remember us getting through every single chapter. When the Lord started bringing those things to my mind, I began to relax a little bit and say, you know what, you're right. We don't have to get to the end of the book. We do need to get to a point where I feel that we know the information, but that doesn't necessarily have to be at the end of the book.
Yeah.
And there were some chapters where we skipped because I thought, well, we don't need that information.
Yeah.
There were some areas where you could look ahead and say, no, we don't necessarily need to read this, this section of the book. We can skip ahead or we can move around.
Oftentimes, right? Those maybe last 2 or 3 chapters. I know for our math curriculum, the last 2 or 3 chapters are a brief introduction to the material that's going to be learned
coming
next
up.
year.
Right. So it's not a bad thing to do it. It's not a bad thing if you want to finish it. I never encourage people to stop early. If you want to finish it and you like it, go ahead. But it's not totally necessary to finish every single workbook and to finish every single page that you're doing. But it did take me several years really to get out of that, what I had convinced myself was guilting myself into finishing everything, because I thought if I don't, then I am failing my children because I'm not covering every single subject. And as a homeschooler, I was like, well, there's this pressure on me. We have to perform. We have people in town asking us if we homeschool. We have family relatives, we have asking us, hey, what are y'all doing? Oh, my kid's doing this. Are your kids doing that? So there was this pressure I felt that I put on myself to perform at a certain level. And when I realized I didn't have to do that, and some of these people were actually being rude, and I didn't have to respond to them, or at least, I could respond to them in a way that was, didn't really answer their question, but did answer their question.
Right.
Once you got to that point, and for me, it took at least 3 years of homeschooling before I could relax and say, this is going to be okay. I don't have to cover every single page of the book.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the Lord is teaching me how to have self-control. And even though I felt discouraged, and even though I didn't want to finish, and even though I wanted desperately to take a break, to just say, it's okay.
Yeah.
You can keep on walking in small way. Just keep on doing what you're doing. Do it in a small way, but let's remove some of the stress.
Did you set a specific date each year that you wanted to end?
Mm-hmm. We did. We always wanted to be done by the time that the public schools were being done. Sometimes we would finish a little bit early, like maybe the last of May or the last of April, so that we had a couple of weeks to enjoy May before the parks and things started getting busy. And mostly we did that for enjoyment of being outside.
Right.
And that is really going to be environment specific. So
yeah, some places, right? April, you're still
exactly
getting snow
exactly.
and different things. But
if you live in Florida, it's going to be different from the people in Kentucky, which is going to be different from the people in Maine, which is going to be different from the people in Montana and Oregon and Texas and Arizona. I can really see where and why my homeschooling friends in Arizona were doing school during the summer.
Yeah.
And then we're taking fall and a huge chunk of fall and a huge chunk of spring off. That made perfect sense to me. And so we did look at the weather. And we did look at, because we lived next door to grandparents, we looked at gardening schedules because my father-in-law does a huge garden. So the kids wanted to be there with him.
Yeah.
So we would look at the weather, we would look at schedules, and my father-in-law usually got really intense on that first week of May. That was kind of my date to say we want to end pretty close to that first week of May, which made us start earlier in the year.
Gotcha.
We would start in July, like mid-July. And then I liked taking things really slowly throughout the year and then letting us have longer winter break, not really spring break, but a longer winter break. And then doing, having some fun things, but ending a bit early just because I wanted the kids to be with their grandfather. I thought that was more valuable than finishing the book.
Yeah. And it's so great that as homeschoolers, we can build that flexibility into our schedules. And,
right.
Some people would call that almost like a year-round schedule.
Exactly.
And we get lots of questions about that. How do I report it? Because here in the state that we're in, we have, a specific number of days that we're supposed to educate our children. And so we're able to, help families navigate that flexibility and making sure that they're getting their days in and reporting them correctly.
And that's one of the things we tell parents is you need to, if you're with an umbrella that requires you to report attendance, then just report what you've done from the beginning to now, but make sure that by the time you get to the end of June, which is generally when the umbrellas are going to restart their new year, right? They're going to restart about the middle of June to the end of June. You want to make sure that you have turned in at least 180 days. Yeah. And that's kind of what we did. So every single time we had to turn in a report, I would always make sure I had that 90 on that page and said, we've done 90.
Yeah.
And I knew that throughout that school calendar year from what is typically a school calendar year from August to May, we were going to get in 180 days. I knew that. So I never kept track of the days. I never counted them. I never put them on a calendar because we were always doing it. And even if we, formally stopped at the first week of May, we still were doing math through the summer. There was still a lot of things they were doing through the summer. That garden required all kinds of education. Oh, the things that they learned sitting out there with their granddad. And he was teaching them things about local history and about family history that they never would have considered to be school. But it was. They were learning so much history and richness about what was occurring in Middle Tennessee that they're getting classes. So occasionally we would continue math and reading through the summer, but the reading was always for fun.
Yeah.
And they always chose something. They never thought, I never made it a point to force anything. It was like, oh yeah, what are you reading this summer? Oh, that's really cool. So it was never something that you forced on them. It was always their personal choices. The only thing that we would, like I said, carry on really would be math.
Yeah.
And that's because I wanted them to be at a certain point as we moved on to the next grade.
Yeah. For us, part of the rhythm of ending out the year was celebrating the things that we had finished, taking time to really look at what we had accomplished, looking back at the book list. I kept a list of the books that we had read or the books that they had read independently, and went through them and the excitement of, oh yeah, I forgot I read that book, or, oh my gosh, that was such a great book. Maybe I'll read it again this summer, which, parents, if your children want to read the same book over and over again, at different times, it is a good thing. Don't stop them from rereading. Rereading is a good thing. We would go back and talk about the projects we did or the field trips we took, and even go through like some of, like our math book and see like, hey, remember when you had a hard time here? And, we could laugh about that. Like, oh yeah, I can't even believe that I thought that was hard, or all those things, because I think it gives us as homeschool moms that reassurance that there were things done for the year, that, you know, our kids have progressed. They've learned a ton. They've enjoyed things. And for the kids too, it's good for them to look back and see, you know, the pleasure that they had in reading something new, or see how they were able to overcome obstacles in learning that maybe you encountered during the school year. So taking that time and celebrating those moments was a big thing for us. One of the things that another friend of mine does is she throws a celebration day. So almost like some of the public schools, she invites a group of other homeschool families over, and they do kind of like a field day. Right. And that's how they end their homeschool year. And I thought that was really, you know, clever for her kids. Like you said, you want to be outside during that time. And so this was a great way for them to get outside, to play games. She did it like a minute to win it kind of thing, and like trivia. So they would plan trivia questions or trivia races based on what they had done that year, and just had a great time doing it. But taking that time to celebrate, I think, is really important, so that you can look back and see what you really have accomplished, the growth that you've seen.
I think it really is important for everybody, kids and adults, to have a finish line kind of goal. So you've set a date where you say, this is when we're totally done, right? And then that way it kind of encourages them, because they know what they have to get done. They have a date they have to get done by. I always got the question, well, if I finish early, can we? Yes, you absolutely can. If you can finish that textbook early, we're done. Yeah. We are so totally done. So that was really important, I felt, is to have a date where you could say we're done right here. And then move on from there. And don't move that date either. It is very, very depressing when dates like that are moved. But do explain. We do need to get to a certain point. Yeah. And if we can't, if there's something coming up, then we'll take a break anyway. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Some of the questions that I like to sit down with for myself at the end of every school year is to sit down and ask myself, what did we love? What did we love doing this year? Were there highlights, subjects, curriculums, books, whatever it might be? What was it? What felt hard or frustrating? What did we learn? What learning felt fun? If there was one thing I could change, what would I change for the year? And then kind of really sit down and go through those questions and reflect and write out the answers, so that when it comes to planning for the next school year, I can look at and say, how can I incorporate, what we really loved? How can I help avoid the hard or frustrating parts? Or, if I can't avoid that, what can I do to make it easier? So we don't get so frustrated, so it doesn't feel so hard. Oftentimes that end of January, beginning of February can be hard when you're in the throes of snowstorms and school outings and all the things. And so how can I prepare for that?
When did you start planning for the next year? I mean, seriously planning what exactly you were going to do for the next year. Did you plan all year? Did you pick up different things, or did you really have a time you said, well, we're going to go to the end of the school year and not plan until May? Or did you begin kind of in the spring while you were ending?
Generally, I start thinking about it in January. I let my mind wander a little bit into those questions that I just posed. And I start thinking, is there anything I need? Is there anything, where are we going to be next year? What are we going to be, doing in history? What do I want to do in science? What kind of books do we want to be reading? I let my mind wander into those things, and, I'll make some notes here and there, but I generally don't do a hard and fast plan until April or May. In April or May, I will definitely sit down and look at, where I want to be. And we follow, the Carol Joy Side schedule for history, and everything is kind of wrapped around that. So I have a general idea of where we're going to go next year, but as to how that's going to be worked out, I won't sit down until April or May and try to figure that out.
Yeah, I think we were pretty much the same. After a few years, I saw that there were used book sales happening in April and May, and I wanted to be a part of that. So I did start to think about what was going to happen the next year during that spring break. We always took a spring break in the middle of March. It coincided with my birthday. It worked out really good. And I would just, get a cup of coffee or hot chocolate and just sit and think about a general overview of where you wanted to be. And then I looked at the dates of when the used book sales were going to be near me, and gathered information about where are we now, where do I think we're going to finish, and where do I want to go for next year. And so I kind of had a plan of when I went to a used book sale of what I wanted to get.
Yeah.
And that allowed me a couple of months to research the book, to see how much I would pay for it brand new, to see how much I could get it from, a used site, and, which books I really wanted to get my hands on. So I liked that, starting in the winter and the spring to just get an overview, because we had that history as a spine. So I knew generally what time period we wanted to look at. And I just wanted to look, what books do I have on my shelf? How can I best use what I already have? And then what do I need to add? Do I really need to add those things? After the, I would say after my oldest was in ninth grade, so I had the other three after her, it really became just filling in, almost like filling in readers, right? You have everything you really need for that spine, and you're filling in books of interest that they might want.
Yeah. Because
everybody has something different they want to maybe look at. So it became much easier as we went through it, and I was just purchasing. It became cheaper too.
Yeah.
Because I was just purchasing new readers, and sometimes I even would look ahead a year and buy things for Christmas.
For sure.
If there was I know that one year we bought a whole bunch of, we bought a castle and knights and things, because I knew that next year we were going to be doing that Middle Ages. And I thought it'd be kind of cool. They wanted them anyway. They thought they were really cool. So I thought, hey, this will be a great Christmas present. And so they got castles and knights and horses and things like that. So.
Yeah. I find it's really easy in that if I start planning too early, or start going deep into planning too early, like in that end of January, beginning of February, because I'm already feeling bored or, just weary because of the dark days and stuff like that.
Weary is a good word to use.
It's easy to let my mind go to the place of we're just going to do something completely new.
Yes.
And, I just forego the whole plan that we've made,
right.
From the beginning.
Right.
And, think about those $300 curriculums. It would be so nice to,
right.
And so that's why I kind of, I let my mind wander a little bit. But I don't let it go to that hard and fast place, because in the headspace of February, it's not a great time.
Yeah, it is. I agree. February, you want to be outside. You're tired of the cold. You're tired of the rain, especially here in the South. We tend to get a lot of rain in January and February. And I just want to see the sun. Mm-hmm. I want to have the sun come through my windows.
Well, and I think, we just have this built in us that we're waiting and anticipating something new.
Yes.
And if we don't, as you said, use self-control and kind of reel that in for what
Right.
it's really supposed to be directed for, which is the newness of life that comes in spring, we can let that run wild into spending a lot of money on things we don't need and disrupting, the kind of trajectory that we had towards the goals that we had. So, it takes a lot of self-control at that point, right?
It does. And that, for me, that was the difficult part, is just making sure I stayed the course. And then the kids are feeling the same thing. They're going through the exact same thing, only they have less self-control than I do. And they could convince me to stop at any moment. Wear me down. You're already worn down.
Yeah.
So here you got these kids are going, oh, come on, Mommy. Okay, let's just stop now.
Yeah.
You're easily worn down. It really was difficult. The only time I think that planning can be really important is when you are finishing 7th grade. I would say that at that point, if you're finishing 7th grade, go ahead and look at the high school requirements for where you're at.
Yeah.
Go
you
ahead and
start thinking about
how do I lead
are
into
there
the
high
9th
school
grade?
requirements that
Exactly.
we're going to try to accomplish in the 8th grade, because you can have so many high school credits in 8th grade.
Yeah, you can think about getting a couple of those credits early in 8th grade, but you want to have at least a framework for what you're going to be doing every single year. Because in Tennessee, you do have to have 4 English and 4 math. So that's all one of those courses every single year. Or if you want to start early in 8th grade, you could get 1 or 2 of them out of the way. So I would, at the end of 7th grade, when you're going into April and May of the end of 7th grade, I would begin to get serious about printing out, and I think we have one on the Exodus website, just a schedule of what those courses look like. Is my child going to go to a 4-year college or a technical college? Here are some of the course recommendations.
Yeah.
Is my child not going to go? Well, then those course recommendations completely change. Do I have a special needs child? Do I just want a certificate of graduation? All of that is going to affect that. But to me, those early years, 1st through 7th grade or kindergarten through 7th grade, really didn't have a ton of continual planning other than the framework where we wanted to rotate our history every couple of years, right? Go ancient and modern and American. But you do want to look a little bit more carefully at the end of 7th grade.
For sure. So as you closed up your homeschool year at the end of May, what kind of record keeping rhythm did you go into?
Because we changed curriculums a few times, there was a change in how I kept the records. It's really easy when you are doing a history textbook as your spine, for you to have seen what is going on and how people are understanding the history. You can hear the conversations at the dinner table. You can start the conversations, but you get a really good sense of how well they're understanding the material. So as far as history was concerned and science and reading, that was, easy for you or easy for me to just say, I understand where they're at. So I didn't have any kind of formal written record. I knew that they were all excelling, they were succeeding, they were all getting A's in those subjects. If it was math, if it was writing, then it's more of looking at the work they're doing, because math generates worksheets. Math generates a piece of paper where you can look at it and say, yes, you are understanding 80 to 90% or 100% of the material. Every single time we do this, you are getting at least 80 to 90% of it done. I'm happy with that. So we never moved on until they understood that. So for that particular For math in particular, I did keep a more of a hard grade, right?
Okay.
So you were getting an A or a B because we weren't moving on if you didn't understand the material. You can't in math, you really shouldn't move on unless you understand the material. So I was looking at what we were generating, how smoothly was the work getting done. And math, like I said, math is something that they're doing at the table. They're doing it at their chair, they're doing it at a desk, at a place where you can see the worksheet, or they're handing the worksheet into you. So that we definitely had a grade for. We didn't really have a record keeping for grades in any of the other subjects. I understood what they were turning in and how well it was working. So we didn't really have a hard and fast rule for that. Now, some of the science curriculum did come with worksheets, and you knew through talking to them that they understood how things were functioning.
Yeah. So for us, for things like history, so I keep a binder for each of my kids, and every year as I go through the planning, in the beginning of the summer, like April, May, it's, that plan of here's the curriculum, here's the books, here's the things we want to go through. And then, by midsummer, I'm making kind of like a syllabus for my kids.
Yeah.
Here's the classes they're involved in. I'm making them a schedule. Like here's, it's not a hard and fast schedule, but it's a schedule of here's what I expect to be completed each day. Here's the classes you're going to. There's a book list on there that, of the books we intend to read for history, language arts, those kind of things. And so I try to keep that together every year. So I've got, each year, I can look back and say, okay, in second grade, we did Matthew C. this, we did, we read these history because we were going through this time period. So these are the books, these are the authors. If there's any projects we've done, I try to take pictures of those and keep those. So
did you keep every project?
No.
Yeah, we didn't either. And I liked that idea of taking pictures. I came across that idea probably when my oldest was in 4th or 5th grade. And someone recommended take the picture of it and then go to Walmart and make like an album of all the different things that you did. Because the albums, those photo albums, were really inexpensive to make.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you have a record of the different things. And that way you don't have them stored everywhere. You don't have to save every paper. And in our state, in Tennessee, no one is going to be going through those papers.
Yeah.
So it really saved me a lot of space. We didn't have space anyway. And I really liked that. There were projects that we did that were big. My kids built a cannon in the yard. That's not going to stay. Not a real cannon that launched things, but it was, out of old wood they found and different pipes around the yard, just all sorts of, filter carb from around the yard. But that is not coming in the house. I'm not putting that in storage somewhere. It's going to sit out there and rot. Sorry, but we did. They built a tank one time out of cardboard. But none of this is. It's an 8-foot tank. That's not coming in the house. I'm sorry. We used it as debris for the garden. But but taking pictures was a way to save those memories. And putting them in in some sort of book would have been great had I remembered to do that.
Yeah,
at the end of the year, I never did remember to do that, but I thought, wow, that's a great idea. We could just, and then every year you'd have a saved of like a yearbook almost, right?
Yeah.
But I love the idea of taking the pictures of things.
Yeah, and I think that time in summer, or in, April and May, when the kids are kind of finished, they can go outside and play. And, as a mom, you can sit down and make sure that, you have your ducks in a row because, while most people here, especially where we're at, don't have somebody coming to look at those records.
Right.
Those records are still equally important because we never know, Here in Tennessee, there's been lots of talk about the laws changing and whatnot. You never know when that's going to change. You never know when somebody might show up at your doorstep, not to be an alarmist by any means. But you definitely want to be prepared. You definitely want to be tracking what your kids are doing. We often recommend to parents to, especially when their kids are young, not necessarily have, a hard and fast schedule or produce all these worksheets, but to have a little spiral bound notebook where they write down all the things that they did, put the date at the top of it and write down all the things that they did during the day. Those would definitely be something you would keep so that if anybody did have question, you could produce that for them.
Right.
And having those records together, I think in the young years, it's good for the mom because it gets us into the habit of doing it so that by high school time, we're in the habit of doing that because those high school years are important. There are, some colleges that will ask, what types of curriculum did you do? What was the scope and sequence of that curriculum? And you want to be able to make sure that you have those things ready if you need to.
That's one of the things that you and I focused on when we created Exodus Christian Academy was that we weren't requiring people to turn in course names or grades, but if they did, we would generate the record for them so that you could keep track of what you had done in the previous years. And for some people, that's really important that they have that. They can go back and say, oh yeah, I forgot. What did we do? Language arts. What language arts did we do? And so we always tell people it's not required. We require attendance, but it's not required that you turn in a grade or a coursework. But if you turn that into us, we're going to make a transcript for you and send it back so you have a record. I like that. I really like that
and
aspect.
Every year we give parents, whether we have one specific to pre-high school and then we have one specific to high school, we give them a planning packet that has, the places where they can track days, where they can write down their plan, where they can record field trips and extracurricular activities, where they can make a plan for the curriculums they're going to use, the books they're going to read, and all those different things. And it's just simple write in or type in forms so that they can get in the habit of having those things together. And I think it's a really important habit to build for families because, we too have, the families that call us and say, I think this is wrong, on a transcript. If we get a child who transfers to us and we've got a transcript from either a public school, a private school, or even another umbrella school, sometimes we'll send, our transcript with that information on it, but it's been reported wrong from the previous school.
Right.
And then the parent's like, well, I thought I had 4 language credits already, but I don't see that here. And so we have to walk through that. And so that's why, even if nobody's showing up at your door, if you do have a problem or a mistake in the transcript, whether it be in the younger years or in the high school years, you're going to want to be able to track that and look at that.
Yeah, and we have had that recently. We had by the time the student came to us, they had been in 2 different school situations in the 3 years previous, and that second school had actually changed what one of the credits from the first school looked like. So as we are preparing the transcript, we have to go back and say, hey, wait a minute, why was this changed? Why is the credit moved around? Because the parent is thinking, no, we're done. We've completed that. And the record from the previous school says, no, you didn't. So we had to really go back and look at that and make sure that it was indeed being reported correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great thing to remember is build that habit early. Yeah. And keeping those records. Anything else, Adonna, you think about when you think about ending the school year well?
Well, I liked what you said earlier about it being weary. And I would say, don't grow weary in doing good.
Yeah.
Really focus on your attitude and your self-control. And if you find yourself growing weary, then maybe this is a really good day to just gather the kids around and let's read through some scripture. Let's read through some Psalms. Let's read through some Proverbs and change up that in what you're doing on a daily basis, as opposed to changing up the schoolwork. Say, hey, let's add a proverb every day. There are 31 proverbs. Let's add one for every single day. And we're just going to read it aloud. So introducing the Word of God, especially the Psalms and the Proverbs, is just read aloud. It's a nice way to not grow weary.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, consider Jesus. It's the opposite of growing weary.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to recap, as you're thinking about how you're going to finish out your homeschool year well, don't forget to take some time to celebrate and look back on all the things that you've accomplished. I feel like it will be more than what you expect it to be.
It will be.
It was for me each year. Reflect on some of those questions that we talked about. What did you love in your homeschooling this year? What felt hard or frustrating? When did learning feel fun? Sometimes just going back to that can help those weary days. And what would you change if you could change one thing in the next year? What would it be? And then make sure to set a date. Write it in your calendar for when you're going to organize and get all of your important records together and get those put away so that you can enjoy the summer outside or doing whatever it is, the rhythm that you create for the summer with your kids. So thank you for being a part of the Journey Through Homeschooling podcast, practical support for every step of your homeschool adventure. We will be back next Wednesday, but before you sign off, like and follow our podcast and connect with us on our social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook, and you can follow our page, Exodus Christian Academy. We'll see you next week.